to a good start.
Welcome to a new edition of the Neon Jazz interview series with legendary Kansas City jazz pianist Tim Whitmer. He is the prodigal son of Kansas City jazz and was fortunate to learn from the likes of Jay McShann, Mary Lou Williams, and Count Basie. We caught up with him in early May 2020 during the Coronvirus Quarantine to discuss the silence of jazz and the future. He is very busy at the top jazz venues in Kansas City and hosts a monthly concert series, Spirituality and All That Jazz, at the Unity Temple on the Plaza. He's always pleasing KC crowds and has great stories. Enjoy.
Hey, Joe, what's going on, buddy?
Oh, man, not too much. It's so good to catch up with you. I've been wanting to talk to you for years, so thanks for taking a slice of time out for us today.
Oh, listen, my pleasure. We've been, a lot going on, and my wife had surgery here a couple weeks ago, so our schedule has been, working around doctor's appointments and stuff, but everything's going real well, and I understand we got the next half hour to chat, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I guess first and foremost, again, thank you, and I just want to know from you, I don't want this to be dominated by COVID-19, but I do want to know
right.
how are you kind of satiating your creative id during this pandemic?
Well, the whole thing happened so fast, it kind of caught, literally the whole world by surprise. 2 months ago, we were, in terms of the gig scene here in Kansas City, it was a very vital scene and a lot was going on. And I play a variety of locations. I play a lot of clubs like the Green Lady, the Phoenix, Cafe Trio. I'm on staff at Community Christian Church. I also run a long-running program at Unity Temple called Spirituality and All That Jazz on the first Wednesday of the month. It's been going for 25 years, and then I do a lot of corporate parties and that sort of thing. And with this lockdown, is kind of put almost all those things on hold. We're doing some streaming at the churches, so that keeps me working still at that point in time, but otherwise, yeah, not playing the clubs, waiting to see what that's going to look like in this next phase of coming back. And so what I've been doing is been being very creative. It's been actually kind of a nice opportunity to take a little bit of time off from just playing, because I play 6, 7, 8 times a week, and take some time off to do some writing, to catch up in my office with the things that I'm doing, to listen to other music, that a lot of things that when you're going in your day-to-day business, you kind of get behind on, just because you're working for the next gig and that sort of thing. So it's been kind of a nice creative pause. I hope it's not a real long pause, but it's been a creative pause and a chance to kind of think outside of the box, and in addition to that, explore the streaming options and the Zoom options, and just kind of wait and see what's going to happen. Yeah,
it's a challenging time. So, let's go into kind of another happier phase of life. Let's talk about
right.
where you were born and raised, and kind of how jazz began for you.
Well, I was born and raised in Kansas City. I'm a native Kansas Cityan. And I grew up basically in the Brookside neighborhood. Went to St. Peter's Grade School, Southwest High School, and UMKC Conservatory. Half of my family is Sicilian, and that side of the family was always into music. My grandfather sang. My mom, who's 89 years old, still plays the piano every day. So I grew up listening to the piano. I grew up with family gatherings where it always ended up with, getting around the piano and people singing songs and all of that kind of thing. In a sense, I was blessed growing up in the 50s and 60s that it was kind of before the internet, and almost every house had a piano, and you could go from house to house, and that was a form of entertainment that everybody did for holidays and just on a regular basis. And I fell in love with it right from the beginning. I was a kind of, I wouldn't say nerd, but I was the kid that you didn't have to drag me to lessons. I was ready to go. I mean, it's, I hear so many stories about people say, oh, I hated my piano lessons, or I wish I would have stayed with it. I asked my parents if I could double them. And the woman who taught me lived across the street, so I was able to do that. And the jazz thing came along. I just started improvising right from the beginning. I've been blessed to. I learned how to read music, and then I was cultivated my ear. My family was always we always had music on both sides of my family, and that was in the days of the hi-fi records and that sort of thing. My folks were very involved with the civil rights movement in the 60s and social justice issues. And I got to, real early on, be familiar with, all different parts of Kansas City. And with that came exposure to the Kansas City Jazz, which I just fell in love with from day one. I thought, wow, this is kind of the best of all worlds. And been kind of hooked on it ever since.
The one thing, as far as I'm concerned, being an observer on the outside, and I've been listening to live jazz in Kansas City since probably the mid-'90s, really started getting into it, been doing the show since 2011. It's safe to say that you are an institution in this town. And I want to know from you, what kind of advantage has it been for you to be from Kansas City? Not even an advantage, but how has that infused the way that you view jazz and carry on? I mean, I'm sure you've been around enough and you've lived long enough. What has the Kansas City roots done for you, for your playing, your longevity, and your influence in this town?
Well, I would say that it's been an integral part of my sound. And there's so many versions of Kansas City jazz. There's so many different kind of jazz that is played in Kansas City, and I think all those are exciting, and I have dealt in most of those in some aspects or another. However, when I grew up, there were still a lot of the original black musicians who had played with Basie and Ellington and Parker. Those guys were still playing in town, and I got to meet Jay McShann. He came to my gigs. I hung out with him. There were guys that, played, like I said, all those bands. And so I really, in particular, got enamored with that swing kind of classic Basie, Ellington, Jay McShann, Jumpin' the Blues kind of thing. That's still kind of my favorite kind of jazz to play. I like all the different other kinds, but that's the one I think I'm kind of the most known for. And I was brought up in a wonderful period of time because it was kind of the last round of that generation that was still playing, that really had played with the seminal bands in the 30s and the 40s and the 50s. And that to me is I wouldn't say the true Kansas City sound, go that far, but for me, it's my favorite Kansas City sound. I like to make people snap their fingers, tap their toes, have a good time. It's a joy-filled intersection kind of jazz and the blues.
So what do you like best about Kansas City?
What do I like best about Kansas City? Besides LC's barbecue, Well, I think it's a wonderful city. It's a wonderful blend of a lot of cultures, especially in the more recent decades. It's kind of all a little bit on hold right now because of the COVID-19, but I think the Kansas City people. It's a Midwestern town. It's a town that it's just fun. It's a fun town to be in. It's we love our sports like the Royals and the Chiefs. We're passionate about our barbecue. I mean, people will go up. You could spend days and nights debating what barbecue they like best. But people in Kansas City love their barbecue, and they love live music. I think. Even broader swath than just jazz. Kansas City's always been a town that values live music. I mean, we pretty much never had a period, even during Prohibition, where we didn't have live music. Tom Pendergast and all these people created speakeasies and places where it was, a lot of jazz, but also just live music. People like to go out and hear music. Concerts are well attended in this area. Clubs are well supported. And it's just kind of a melting pot of a lot of different cultures coming together in the music that I find very exciting. And I think that people in Kansas City are upbeat and easy to be with. And I love being able to play piano for them.
The one thing that I always ask musicians, and this was pre-COVID-19, is, how healthy is jazz as an organism in 2020? But I know now, I've talked to enough jazz musicians, it's staggering the amount of shows that have been canceled by one musician, one venue, and in one city. I mean, just for you alone, for what you've just said, for the Green Lady Lounge, for Kansas City, have you thought about that? How staggering it is, the amount? I mean, on the one side of it, it's really just unimaginably bad. But on the other hand of it, it just proves the might and the worth. And of course, Kansas City was in a renaissance. Have you really thought about that?
Oh yeah, that's a good point, Joe. The city was, at a renaissance is a good word for it. I've been playing professionally for about 40 or 50 years, so I've seen the ups and downs, and there were some real lean periods in as far as the amount of clubs for quite a long time. But I grew up in a period where there still were a lot of clubs, and then it kind of faded. Interest kind of faded for a while, and then, but especially in the last 10 years, as Kansas City has really put itself back on the map, a vibrant downtown, businesses coming here, people moving down to live. When the COVID-19 thing hit, I think we were at almost, if not an all-time high, at least a high point that we haven't seen in decades. I mean, there were so many clubs. You mentioned the Green Lady. I mean, think of all the musicians that he was running 2 and 3 bands, maybe 4 bands a day at times. The Phoenix runs several bands, and there's a host of other clubs that I'm not even mentioning off the top of my head right now. But I mean, people were playing jazz education in Kansas City, especially with the work that Bobby Watson has done over at EMKC and Jim Mayer has done at Kansas City, Kansas Community College, just to name 2. Todd Wilkinson out of Ottawa. The interest in jazz, I think, has been really high, and the city fathers have figured out that if you're going to market Kansas City as a convention destination, which is the reason that we were building all these hotels before this COVID-19 temporarily, I hope just temporarily stopped it, was, they really learned how to market. Kansas City is a livable city, a fun city. It has great live music, and it has a unique cuisine, if you will, with its barbecue. So all those things seem to be really gelling right before this thing hits, and I hope we can get back there, because it was a very exciting period of time. People who wanted to work were working. I mean, and they were teaching. Churches were hiring jazz musicians. I have a program where I do jazz services in all sorts of denominations of church work, and it was an very exciting period of time, and very diverse. A lot of different things happening, I thought. And then on the younger range, the guys that are coming out in their 20s and 30s, I mean, they're doing some phenomenal things and moving the jazz on to its next stage, as well as respecting the tradition. So it was a very, very exciting time, and very sad to see this thing, like within 2 months, just totally stop in its tracks. But Kansas City is a resilient town, and people, I think, they can't wait to hear live music again. I think when it comes back, people will be back out. I just long for that day, and we've got to wait till it's safe, though. So, and I do believe in that.
Yeah, well, and piggybacking off of that notion, let me ask you this. When we do return to live music, what do you hope both the musician and the crowd realizes from this time away? What revelations?
I think both the musicians and the crowd will, not so much a revelation, but I think they will realize once again what a great thing that they have. You know, it will deepen their appreciation, if you will. You know, I talk to so many people right now, or people call and they say, God, you know, we had so much great music going on. Or from the musician side, I hear people say, you know, I had so many fun gigs and stuff like that. And it's not that we were taking them for granted, but it was just such, you know, we wouldn't think that it was any way that something like this would cut the whole thing right, put it on hold. So I think it would be a renewed appreciation for it, and on both the part of the performers and the audience. My PS is on that. We have something that a lot of other cities don't. I mean, I've toured and played in almost all the major cities and a lot of the minor ones in Kansas City, and I've been lucky to play the Montreux Festival in Switzerland and been around. And you know, we go to places and do radio shows. The first thing they ask about is the Kansas City sound, and quite frankly, sometimes the DJs are even more educated than we are. I mean, it's something that they've really, you know, can't get enough of. And so we've got something probably only a handful of cities in the United States have. We have a sound, and we have a history, and we have a history of the people and the audience. I mean, the people and the musicians interacting. And I look forward to that returning.
So what do you like best about being a live performer?
Well, I'm an extrovert, so it's I love to play. I consider myself very, very blessed. That's something I started doing when I was 8 or 9 years old. I'm still doing it. I've been, knock on wood, most of my life been able to make a living doing it. I love the interaction with people. I love seeing how people react to the music, how they get excited when you're playing, how it brings them joy, and you know, it's. I met Mary Lou Williams many years ago when I was studying at the conservatory, and somebody asked her, "What are the two most important things about music?" And she says, "All music really falls into two categories. You're either helping make somebody be happy, or you're helping healing them." And that's kind of been one of my mantras all along. When you're playing, if people are celebrating or they're getting off work and they want to kind of be distracted from their day-to-day concerns, the music makes them happy, and it also has a bit of a healing quality. When you play in churches, it's even more of a healing quality because of the nature of the venue you're playing in. But that's what I try to do. I try to bring happiness to my music, and I try to bring healing to my music. And if I'm doing that, then I feel like I'm doing not only musically, but spiritually what I want to be doing.
So why do you love this thing we call jazz?
Why do I love the thing we call jazz? I think because it gives you so much freedom. I mean, it's, and I like especially, it gives you so much freedom. You can just, my degree actually is in classical piano, and I love classical music too, but the jazz is where I've kind of made my name for the most part. And I like the freedom you can, and that it's an umbrella. There's so many different kinds of jazz. There's the swing jazz, there's the contemporary jazz, there's the modern jazz, the smooth jazz, all of them, you know. It's jazz is kind of a menu of related forms, and you can kind of pick the one you want or dabble a little in each. It differs from classical in the sense classical you're reinterpreting and interpreting major beautiful works of art, Mozart and Beethoven, all of that. But you really are glued to the note, and which is very good too. But I like the elasticity and the freedom of playing in the moment when you play it. Jazz is one of the great things about playing jazz is that you can play the same song a million times and it always sounds different. And a million different guys can play it. Everybody who plays that song is going to play it slightly different. And every time you play it, if your ears are open, you hear new things. So it's a kind of music that never kind of exhausts your interest or your creativity. I mean, it's one teacher told me once that I think it was Ahmed Aladdin, that the great thing about it is every day you realize you're still a student. You're still learning. And what a great thing in life to be able to invest so much time and energy and then find that there's still so much more in there. It's not exhaustive. I mean, it's free. Man, I don't know. My fingers like to play it. That's what it is.
No, I dig it. Yeah. No, I love that notion too of just learning. I mean, I find that with just being a fan of it, there's just it never stops. It's infinity. It's like there's no end to that universe. You can travel and travel, and there's no wall to it.
That's a good way to put it.
So let me ask you this: everyone has a perception of you. This town does. Your family, your friends, your fans, but you're living your life. Who do you believe Tim Whitmer is?
Oh boy, that's a tough one. I'd like to hear what some of the other people say, but
it's very. It is like it's like onion layers, man. Every single layer is different.
I'm kidding you. It should be all over the place because when you play and you've been a performer for many years, there's pluses and minuses, and how some people will love your playing, some people will not. Some people like it part of the time. Some people say, "Oh, he's better in this period," or "He's better in that period." So that's just a part of being an artist, and I find that fine. One of the things I find about criticism is that the neat thing I found about criticism early on is that if somebody criticizes you, and you're going to get that. I mean, it's a legitimate form of the art. I mean, because you give a performance and then there's a critique, and if it's a big enough performance, you get a review in the paper and the media. And the neat thing is that I always learn from those things, because if somebody says something that resonates, that's true, like that you made this mistake, or you're leaning towards too much of that or this, if it's true, then you've learned something. And that is cool. Part of the reason of putting your art out there is to find out what you're doing that's working and what you're doing that needs work. If it's not true, then you don't have to worry about it, because it's just a difference of opinion. But what I try to just be is I just try to be a person who brings joy and happiness and healing to my music, and to live a life that corresponds to those values. I mean, I don't know. I don't really have a really great definition. I just kind of get up and I do what I do, and I love people, and I love the fact that by playing the piano for this many years, I have met so many people, and also been able to keep in contact with people, not just musicians, but just people. And I love people. I'm a people person. That's one of the things I don't like about this COVID thing. The Zoom is okay, and the FaceTime and all that kind of stuff, and streaming the music, but nothing like you're playing in a club, or you're playing at a church, or you're playing in a concert, or a big corporate event. The big part of me is playing off of the people. I think that a really good performance is when the performer kind of throws it out to the audience, and the audience gets it, and then they throw it back to the performer, and then the performer goes to an even higher level. And that is, to me, a really good performance.
Right on, man. That's a great answer. Tim, thank you. I really appreciate you taking some time out for Neon Jazz today, and I look forward to seeing you back at the Green Lady and beyond.
Sounds good, and I appreciate you working with my schedule.
Thanks for listening and tuning in to another Neon Jazz interview, where we give you a bit of insight into the finest players in Kansas City and spots all over the world, giving fans all that jazz. And thanks to Tim for his time, music, and stories. If you want to hear more interviews, go to Famous Interviews with Joe Domino on the iTunes Store. Visit Neon Jazz at youtube.com, and for everything Neon Jazz all the time, go to the neonjazz.blogspot.com. Until next time, enjoy the jazz, my friends.
Neon Jazz.